I will openly admit that generally there's more negative content on this channel than there is positive, because for the most part, you guys seem to like negative content better. But that is going to change today because we're going to be positive. We're going to talk about the best case scenario for every single team in the NBA this upcoming season. What is the ideal? This could actually happen for them this year for every single team. We begin with the Milwaukee Bucks, and for me, it's proving that last year was basically a fluke. It's very easy, in my opinion, to make the case that Milwaukee would have won the title last year if Chris Middleton was healthy. The fact that they took Boston to 7 games even without Chris Middleton, the fact that Boston went 6 games in the finals, and as good as I think that Boston team was, if you just have a healthy Chris Middleton last year, they're at the very least going to go 6 or 7 games with Golden State, and at that point, who knows what would happen. And this year, if they're healthy, they can very easily be just as good. Giannis is still going to be unbelievable. A championship is a very realistic possibility for Milwaukee, and you can make the argument they should be the favorites this upcoming season. Next up now, the Golden State Warriors. Speaking of, I just put down Dynasty 2.0. Like, they have a realistic chance here, given the fact they just won a title, given the fact that they have future assets, their guys are still going to be really good this upcoming season. They could really start a dynasty that wins, 6 titles in 12 years or 5 titles in 10 years, whatever the case may be, and then continue to add on to that. That would be not just, oh, well, the Warriors were really fun there from 2015 to 2022, but like an actual dynastic historical run. I think that's on the table for them starting this upcoming season. Next up, the Brooklyn Nets. We're going to start talking about them early in the video because there's positive things happening. The biggest thing is if everybody's happy, if everybody's healthy, I still think they could be a conference finals team. I really do. Maybe beyond that, depending on whatever happens with this team, it could obviously all fall apart, but we're being positive today. Don't be negative, okay? If Simmons is healthy, if he plays well around Kyrie and KD, the talent is there, the depth is there. And I'm really interested, I'm really intrigued. They could very easily be a true contender this upcoming season, despite the chaos that was the offseason for them. Next up now, the Dallas Mavericks. I put down that I think this could be the year where we really start looking at Luka as like a top 3, top 2 player in the entire league. This could be his MVP year. This could be a team that I don't see them as true championship contenders right now, but they could easily make the conference finals. And Luka as like a top 2, top 3 player in the league, I think is a very realistic possibility this upcoming season, which should be very exciting for Mavs fans. Next up now, the LA Lakers. And I put down Patrick Beverley makes an all-star team and an all-defense team. It's Russ figures it out, hopefully, for them. Next up now, the Philadelphia 76ers. James Harden is the entire center point of the entire season for them. If he's good, if he's, 28 points per game level James Harden, if he's a playmaker, if he looks like he's in shape, if he looks like he's healthy, they are easily one of the most dangerous teams in the Eastern Conference, assuming everybody's healthy. They have assets to make some other things happen as well. There's a world in which the Philadelphia 76ers are NBA champions 12 months from now, and that should be really, really exciting, and I'm interested to see if they can put it together because the talent is there. Next up now, the Portland Trailblazers. I have, Dame is back to being himself, all NBA caliber guy, and they could very easily make the second round of the playoffs. I don't see them as a conference finals team or finals team because they're just not as talented at some of the other spots, but they could very easily set themselves up to be a really interesting offseason team a year from now with all the assets that they have, with the possibility of moving some picks and some young guys and things like that. I think some playoff noise is a realistic expectation for Portland this season. Speaking of playoff noise, the Atlanta Hawks, I have them down as the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't see them as a finals team. I don't think they have the ability defensively to be that level of a team, but if Trey and DeJounte mesh together super well the way that they're hoping, that's a significant upgrade for them in terms of talent, in terms of versatility, all the different options that they have not being so Trey-centric, and I really very easily could see them being a conference finals team this season, best case scenario. Now we're getting into some murkier ones here. The Washington Wizards. Bradley Beal steps up, is happy and has a really good season, and they need one of the young guys to show themselves as like the guy, whether it's Kuzma, whether it be Kispert, whether it be whoever, Johnny Davis. They need somebody they can point to and say, that's the other guy other than Bradley Beal. Maybe it's Kristaps Porzingis. Maybe he's healthy. But if one of those guys becomes, hey, here's our other piece other than Bradley Beal, that's huge for them. And I really do think that can happen, whether that's KP getting healthy, whether it's Kuzma. They need one of those guys, and that's a realistic possibility this season. Next up now, the Boston Celtics. They absolutely can win the title this year and be young champions as well. I mean, they have other guys that are approaching their 30s or in their 30s. Marcus Smart's getting a little bit older. But of course, Tatum and Brown, that pairing, having those guys win a title when they're 25, 26 years old would be absolutely massive for them and set themselves up for years and years of future success. Kind of similar to how Giannis winning a title 2 years ago at the age of whatever it was, 25 or 26, was huge for him as well. There's so much confidence that comes with that, and I think Boston can very, very easily be champions this upcoming season. It's a realistic expectation, 100%. Moving on now to the Chicago Bulls. For me, it's all about health. If Lonzo's healthy and, Patrick Williams, Caruso, all those guys are playing, they can be the team that they were at the beginning of last year. At the beginning of last year, Chicago looked like potentially a 1 seed in the East. Now, I don't know if they're going to be like that because the East is very talented, but they could be a top 3 team in the East if they are that team from the beginning of the season last year, and if they're healthy. The talent is there. The scoring is there. It's just about defense for them, and that's all about the health of Caruso, Patrick Williams, and Lonzo. If those guys are healthy, I think top 3 could be a thing for Chicago this upcoming season, despite how talented the rest of the East is. Next up now, the Miami Heat. I see them as a finals team. Maybe not a championship level team, but a finals team certainly. Health is going to be a big deal for them as well. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, another step up from Tyler Hero, another step up, especially offensively, from Bam. They have the depth, they have the pieces, they can make some moves. They can definitely be a finals team this upcoming season, and that's just what the Heat do, right? They just continue to raise those expectations, continue to meet them, and we'll see what happens. Moving on now to the Toronto Raptors, and for me, I put down the next Celtics. And what that means is you go from like an interesting young team with some interesting pieces to, oh wait, like these guys could be championship contenders for years to come. And I think Scotty Barnes has that level of talent. I think Gary Trent and OG and Siakam and Van Fleet, like they have so many really, really good pieces there. And all it takes is a little bit of growth from each of those younger guys. And all of a sudden we're looking at a team that I think could be like a conference finals team this season, which is a huge step up for them in terms of what their ceiling is moving forward. I'm not saying they're going to win the title. I'm not saying that they're going to make the finals, but the talent is there to set themselves up to be real contenders over the next few seasons, and that would be an awesome outcome for their season. Speaking of talent, the New Orleans Pelicans, I have written down that they established themselves as the most talented team in the league and they make the Western Conference Finals. They're still a little bit too young for me to consider them as a potential finals team, but strictly from a talent perspective, if Ingram's healthy, if Zion is healthy, if CJ's healthy, all these other guys, it's not a top-heavy situation. Like they have a ton of depth, they have a ton of different options. Western Conference Finals from a talent perspective is a realistic possibility. Now, they probably would take, making the second round of the playoffs, winning a playoff series would be a huge thing for them. But given what we saw from them in the postseason last year, and if we're getting a return of healthy Zion, Western Conference Finals might even be a little bit too pessimistic for them. I don't know. I don't want to get too carried away, but I'm really excited to see what they look like this year. Moving on to the Minnesota Timberwolves, I also have them down as a possible Western Conference Finals team. They could very easily be a top 4 team in the Western Conference, especially during the regular season. And if the Cat and Gobert thing works really well, and especially if Anthony Edwards continues to grow and develop the way that he has, the talent is there. Whether that's going to continue to be a thing over the next couple of seasons, I don't know. But right now, this year is probably their best bet to be a conference finals team. And there's at least a slight possibility of that happening, in my opinion. Next up is one that's hard to kind of get a hold of, and it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. Because on one end, you have, the best case scenario would be that they win like 12 games so that they can add more young talent and tank. Whereas on the other hand, like there's actually a decent amount of talent here already, and they could maybe make the play-in game. So for me, I went with like a healthy roster, of course, Chet being healthy, and then maybe making a play-in push. Like they've been a decent team when they've been healthy, and they've tried in the beginning of the last couple of seasons. And I could very easily see them being like the 9th seed in the West and playing in a play-in game for a possibility, making the playoffs. Whether you think that's the best case scenario or not, I'm not sure, but I think it's a possibility. And now the Phoenix Suns. I basically just put down that the Mavs series was a fluke, that they proved that whatever happened to them in Game 7 last year with all the stuff that was going on with their team meant nothing, and that they were still a 60-plus win team. They were still a team that 2 years ago made the finals, and this year they can very easily make the finals and maybe win the title. Now, that depends on Chris Paul health and the chemistry of the roster and whether they're going to be able to add some depth pieces here, but expectations-wise, I think they're still thinking of themselves as contenders, and I think that's at least mildly realistic. Next up, the Utah Jazz, they just need to bottom out and tank. They need to trade Mitchell, they need to get picks, they need to get a top pick in this upcoming draft. That's the best case scenario for them. Them keeping Mitchell and winning 35 or 40 games because he's just that good despite the rest of the roster not being that good is not a good situation for them to be in. Move Mitchell, bottom out and tank. That's best case for them 100%. Speaking of Donovan Mitchell, next up is the New York Knicks. I have best case that they trade for Donovan Mitchell and they're like a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. I really think that's a realistic thing for them because if they're healthy, like there are other teams that are not going to be healthy. Milwaukee might have injury issues, the Nets, Miami, Philly. There's going to be a team in that top 4 that you're expecting to be really good that just isn't because of injuries and otherwise. And New York can definitely, with Donovan Mitchell, I think slide in there. We saw them a couple of years ago be a top 4, top 5 seed. That could happen for them this season if they trade for Mitchell. If they don't trade for Mitchell, they're not going to be remotely close to that, but that'd be a huge step up in talent for them, and maybe they'll be a top 4 seed, which would be really fun. Speaking of top 4 seeds, the Cleveland Cavalier is a team that everybody wants to forget about, nobody wants to talk about, whether they make a move for somebody or not. This roster has the talent, in my opinion, to be a really surprising top 5, top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Between Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, some of the wings that they're trying to, fit in there at the 3 spot, whatever happens with Colin Sexton, I think that this is a roster that really people aren't paying attention to because it's not as flashy. Talent-wise, top 4 seed is realistic for them. Maybe a conference finals run as well. The Sacramento Kings, best case scenario, they make the playoffs and they break the longest playoff drought in the league. That has to be the expectation. That has to be the hope. That has to be the goal. That has to be what you're going for here, given what they've done over the last couple of years from a roster perspective. Their offseason was actually pretty good. I liked a lot of their moves. If Fox and Sabonis can figure it out and they're healthy, they can guard. Keegan Murray is really good as a rookie. Maybe they'll make the playoffs. Next up now, the Houston Rockets. I have that the young guys grow, they continue to get better, but not too much. Like, they're not ready to start making a play-in push. They're not ready to start being a team that actually kind of matters towards the end of the year. They still need, in my opinion, one more top pick. Wait it out. They're getting a little bit ahead of schedule here. Jabari looks good. Jalen Green looks good. All the other depth pieces they have. One more year where they grow, but not too much in terms of wins. And then next year, maybe they could be a really interesting team. I can't believe I waited this long to get to them in the video. The Denver Nuggets are up next. If healthy, they're championship contenders. They just are. They have the back-to-back MVP. They have an incredible amount of offensive talent when healthy, and they've added some really nice depth pieces to this roster as well. I don't think that it's even a debate. If you get old Jamal Murray and old Michael Porter Jr. back on this roster, they are contenders. The expectation for them is to win the title, and I think it's a realistic expectation. Next up, the Orlando Magic. It's all about Paolo. Obviously, you want to see what happens with Franz, and they have 1,000 guards that they need to figure out. But if Paolo looks awesome, then they're in a fantastic spot because that's the guy they're missing. They're missing the go-to guy, the perimeter guy, the big wing that they can just count on to get buckets every single time down the floor. As much as I like Franz, he's not projected, at least in my mind, to be that guy. But if Paolo's the number one franchise cornerstone guy they haven't had in a long, long time, that changes everything for them. That's best case scenario for them. Maybe a slight play-in push, but realistically, it's all about, is Paolo that guy? Next up now is the Memphis Grizzlies, and for me, they might end up being like kind of 2015 Warriors vibes, where not that they come out of nowhere, but they have a lot of depth. They're an interesting team. They play with a lot of energy. They have good coaching, and all of a sudden we're like, wait, this team is the 1 seed, and they're really good, and you almost don't want to believe how good they are until all of a sudden they're winning the title. I don't know if I see Memphis as a team that can win the title this year, but it's a similar kind of situation where they're an up-and-coming young team that could very quickly become like a finals team all of a sudden that people are underestimating. A 1 seed in a a finals appearance, I think is best case scenario for them. I think they absolutely could make the finals this year. Next up now, Charlotte. It's not particularly exciting, but LaMelo takes a leap and he's happy. Like, that's all they can hope for. They don't really have anything else to be hopeful about on the roster at the moment. Given, where the East is at, maybe you could say they're going to make a play-in push. I think that's unrealistic. It's about how LaMelo grows and if he's happy or not. A couple more teams now. Next up is Detroit. It's all about, to me, Cade and Jaden Ivey, and those two guys meshing together really well. If they do, they're going to be a league pass team for me 100%. I'm going to be watching way more Pistons games than I ever have in the past to watch those two guys continue to mesh and grow together. That's going to be huge for them. Next up, we have the Indiana Pacers. I just put bottom out. They need to be as far down to the bottom as they can while being healthy and while maintaining the growth and development of guys like Tyrese Halliburton. They don't have a centerpiece guy, in my opinion. As much as I like Halliburton, as much as I like some of the other guys on the roster, they need another top 3 pick, they need a top 3 pick in general, and that should be the goal for them, is be good at developing their young guys, but be bad at actual winning basketball games. Next up, the Spurs, a similar kind of thing, but like in a classier way. You know what I mean? Like, they're still gonna try and win basketball games, but they're also in developing young guys mode. They've got all these future picks. Bottoming out is the best case scenario for them as well. And then last up is the LA Clippers, who I put at the end of the video because I think that if healthy, people are really underestimating this team. They can be NBA champions this upcoming season, which goes a lot towards what their kind of goal is with redefining what LA basketball fandom looks like. Winning a title, especially in a season in which the Lakers don't look like they're going to be all that good, would be huge for them, and I think that's a real expectation, and that is the best case scenario for every single team in the league. Let me know down in the comment section below which one you agreed with the most, as well as the one you agreed with the least, and I will see y'all next time.